I would like to start by saying what we are not. And this is, in a way, important for our work to say that we are not artists, because when people think of an artist, like just generally, they think of something or someone like this. And we also say that we're no satirists, even though we can be very funny and with lots of jokes in the work we do. But it's also because people, when they think of a satirist, they generally think of people like him, for example. And we also say that we are no activists, because even though we do political activism, when we work, we don't want to be put into one bowl with people like this or like this. So, as you already said in the beginning, we are aggressive humanists. That is what we like to be called as. And of course, I am a filmmaker, and I would call myself an artist, because calling myself as an artist is maybe the closest that it gets to what I do in my work in the Center for Political Beauty. And also our works we do, I would call them works of art, or we call them works of art. And maybe also theater works, theater and public space. And I would like to now present to you 3 of my favorite works, because presenting the work is maybe the best thing we could then talk about what we do as a collective in Berlin. So, and maybe what is the importance of art. So in 2014, Berlin celebrated 25 years of the fall of the Berlin Wall. And this was huge. The whole foreign press was in Berlin. Weeks before that, we had this crazy light border which cost millions, and people were going absolutely berserk by the idea of, wow, the wall has fallen, we have no more walls. And we thought, well, we know these images. We see them every day. So we tried to get the watch of the world from this to this, the things that are happening outside the new walls, the new European walls. And let's start by a campaign video.
Gruppe gegen Menschlichkeit. Gestern Mittag ist die Installation Weiße Kreuze, die den Toten an der Mauer gedenkt, aus dem Regierungsviertel in Berlin geflüchtet. Die Mauertoten sind jetzt in Sicherheit vor den offiziellen Gedenkfeiern am 9. November. Die Mauertoten sind an den Außengrenzen der Europäischen Union. In einem Akt der spontanen Solidarität sind die Kreuze zu den Menschen geflüchtet, die auf dem Weg nach Europa dehydrieren, kentern und ertrinken. Sie sind jetzt in den Armen ihrer zukünftigen Schwestern und Brüder. Flüchtlingen, die als nächstes an den europäischen Außenmauern sterben werden.
Heute ist der 3. November 2014. In 6 Tagen wird dem Fall der Mauer gedacht. Ein großer Tag. An dieser Mauer gingen 1200 Menschen zugrunde. Das Unrecht hielt sich 28 Jahre fest. Doch ihr Tod hatte einen Sinn. An dieser Grenze gehen Zehntausende Menschen zugrunde. Jedes Jahr. Das Unrecht befindet sich gerade erst im Aufbau.
So sieht das aus, was die Ruhe der Mauertoten stört. Ein Verrat an ihrer Geschichte. Das ist das Erste, was Menschen in ihrer größten Not von Europa zu sehen bekommen. Und das ist erst der Anfang. Wir leben am Vorabend der militärischen Abregelung Europas. 25 Jahre nach dem Mauerfall werden Europas Grenzen wieder dicht gemacht.
Diese Mauern zwingen Hunderttausende auf das offene Meer. Sind das die Grenzen eines selbstbewussten und hilfsbereiten Kontinents?
So, When we do this work, this theatre play, as we like to call it, then we often start off by giving out a press release. Yeah? And in this case, you see these crosses representing people who have been killed trying to flee the inner Berlin Wall. And these crosses, our narration was they didn't want to stay there while the commemoration party was going on. If you don't think on for the next people that will die at borders, where's the sense? Where's the sense of having a memorial? So these crosses, they left, as you saw, and you must see that was like this is in front of the Reichstag, so there's police surveillance cameras all the time, and these crosses fled, and they fled on a Saturday, and nobody noticed that they were gone until we brought out our press release on a Monday morning, and then media were going absolutely berserk. It was like, this is just one show of a tabloid paper. We were headline on it. People were going absolutely crazy about how could we do something like this. This is what it says, yeah, how can you do something like that? And then it's about refugee helpers taking away this memorial. The press wrote all different things. I'll just let you read this, for example, from Die Welt. Spiegel Online, for example, wrote this. So you must imagine the press was going absolutely berserk, and everybody was talking about these crosses missing. At the same time, a refugee boat with 15 people sank in front of Turkey in the Mediterranean, in the sea, and they just got like a tiny note in the newspaper. It's about the question in which Europe we want to live, and in what worlds and frontiers, in a humane or pseudo-humanitarian one, about whether we want to commemorate or continue to think. And this whole thing was even debated.
Allein in Berlin sind bei Flugversuchen mindestens 136 Menschen umgekommen.
You won't understand, but it's in the Bundestag, of course, talking about 136 people have been killed at the inner Berlin Wall, and now these crosses have been taken away from the Germans, even though we want to commemorate now. And this is absolutely terrible. He's saying that we took away these crosses, and he will look that these crosses are being brought back to the place they have been taken away. Here you see, yeah, of course, Angela Merkel, you know him, then the Social Democrat, Mr. Gabriel. It also was a political issue about how far is art allowed to go. This was discussed because the director of the Gorki Theater in Berlin, Shermin Langenhoff, she almost lost her job on this. The discussion went far, and how far is art allowed to go? Yeah, what's the border of art? How free is art? And when we work a lot with lawyers. So our lawyer, for example, said that they learn in the first year of law, they learn that if you want to take something and you have the will to bring it back, then you're not a thief then. So these are just things, if we get closer to our work, and I'll talk about this, working with lawyers and seeing where are the borders, how far can I push the borders, and how far can we go as a group or as activists, artists, whatever. Yeah, this is what really interests us. So still, even though we were within the law, the discussion was how tasteful is this or not. The second part in the same action was very much about talking back on history, reliving history.
So kam vor 25 Jahren der Mauerfall ins Rollen. Dieses Erbe müssen wir bewahren. Alles, was wir dafür brauchen, ist ein Bolzenschneider und viele Menschen. Aber wie kommen wir zur Grenze? Spenden Sie, dann haben wir Busse. Am Freitag stehen Busse bereit, die Sie zur europäischen Grenze bringen. Gehen Sie auf unsere Crowdfunding-Seite, da können Sie spenden und sich registrieren, um mitzufahren. Wir haben alles vorbereitet und getestet. Sie müssen nur noch einsteigen.
So, and because we like the idea, of course, of a wall falling, a fence falling, whatever, we called for people to get into buses and to crowdfund the buses for us to go down to the European border, which was amazing for us to see. It was one of our early actions we did, was that we not only got the money together, but there were just so many people, 100 people we got on the 2 buses that we got financed to go down to the European border. This was the pack that we told them to take. This was the most important thing. Of course, clean underwear is very important beside the bolt cutter. And of course, this book, bird watching book. So then at this green border, you can pretend you do other stuff before you tear it down. When we prepare our work, we need 4 to 6 months to do so. Like, we put a lot of research into the work before we go there. So we drove down and looked at different parts of the border before we went there, and saw that these are like deserted places, really, a lot of green and so on. So we thought, yeah, this would be a place where we could go with 100 people, camp, and tear it down. And yeah, this was our historical picture that we took as an example, and them also cutting it down with bolt cutters. So what we did, we ordered NATO barbed wire from eBay and tried it out with different bolt cutters and these flexes, and saw how much do you have to click, how can you tear down this border. 148 times, and then it's open. This was our motto: behave calmly and resolute when tearing down the EU border. And here you see a few images of people in front of the Gorky Theatre, and of course, who was there quickly? The police. The police was at the theater. Straight away, we told them, this is a theater play, yeah? We're doing a reenactment, and still a helicopter was going over the Gorky Theater, and we had like hundreds of police searching through all the baggage of everybody who wanted to get on a bus, and searching for something that they might have be able to take away from us. And in German, we then have the saying, to get rid of them, we have the saying, gib dem Hund die Wurst, so give the sausage to the dog, so it's happy. And we did that. This is the bolt cutter. And we sent all the other bolt cutters and flexes behind in private cars then, after the buses. So we were still quite, full of enthusiasm that we would make it down to the green border and tear down the walls with our 100 friendly revolutionaries. But what we didn't know at that time, what we found out later, was that the Berlin police has already contacted, like, the German FBI, I now called it. That's maybe the easiest for you. And they contacted every country that is close to the border, saying that there's 2 buses with crazy people coming, trying to tear down the border. So what happened then was that at every border, our buses were stopped. Everybody had to get out. All the IDs were checked. All the luggage was going through, and so on and so forth. So by the time we finally made it there, this was kind of the trust that was following us, of police cars, of private cars, of some kind of Bulgarian Nazi hooligans that were following us, that hated us going down there, and so on and so forth. So our plan of getting there unnoticed and camping wasn't so easy. But as you can see, we were still full of enthusiasm, even though we had this crazy, 48-hour bus ride, and a lot of vegan people with, of course, the petrol stations, really bad food, so it was terrible for them. Arriving at the border, and the border police was already waiting there, but not only the border police, but the how do you call them? Like these in German you say Aufstandsbekämpfung. I don't know in Dutch. Yeah, like. Exactly. Yeah. So there was no chance whatsoever of at least going and looking at our border. What you see in the back is like the old Eiserner Vorhang, we call it, like the old border between East and West. And we were discussing with them, but there was no chance of getting through. But we were there. We tried it. And if this is failing or not failing, and in what way art can fail at all, this is maybe an interesting discussion we can put to the end. The next work I would like to present to you is all about the question of what happens to the people that die at our border. In the past 15 years, officially, there were 23 or 25,000 people killed trying to reach Europe. But of course, the unofficial numbers are so much greater. If you talk to the rescue boats in the Mediterranean, they say if you see one boat sinking, there's at least one other one sinking somewhere, because it's just so many tiny boats coming, you just have no idea. So what happens to the people that are not sunk to the sea, but they see, as you see the bodies here, and they have no IDs, you don't know what happens to them. So we started researching for this project, and during the research we found this with a journalist together, this mass grave. It's at the border of Turkey and Greece, 2010, with about 200 refugees, who were buried there because the countries and the borders, they just don't know what to do with them. When we were down there researching, this was the 31st of May in 2015, there were 17 people killed and found killed, and this is the Italian Marine putting up the corpse like this for the press. And we followed the bodies to see what happens with them. How are they buried? Are they having a Muslim or a Christian grave, or are their relatives being noticed, or at least trying to find out who their relatives are? Because if you go to a war, for example, you have the classic is the Red Cross that jots down the names of people who have died, and they try to find out who they are. But this is not the case in the Mediterranean people dying. So 4 days later, we saw this. It's huge fridge, and what you see here is actually blood. And this is how the same bodies were then stored afterwards, and we don't know how they were buried.
Ab dieser Woche lassen wir die Toten nicht mehr in Südeuropa auf Bergen und in Kühlkammern verrotten. Wir holen das Problem nach Deutschland. Gemeinsam mit Angehörigen, Imamen, Pfarrern und Bestattern haben wir unwürdige Grabstätten geöffnet und die Toten exhumiert. Wir präsentieren sie unter den Augen der europäischen Öffentlichkeit ihren bürokratischen Mördern. In dieser Woche werden wir die Ermordeten an unterschiedlichen Plätzen der Hauptstadt aufbahren und würdig beerdigen. Die exakten Orte und Termine geben wir aufgrund der politischen Sprengkraft erst 6 Stunden vorher bekannt. Es soll sie unvorbereitet treffen. Am Sonntag bringt ein Marsch der Entschlossenen Tote direkt bis vors Kanzleramt. Angeführt von einem Bagger wird einer der bedeutendsten öffentlichen Plätze der Bundesrepublik in ein Friedhofsfeld verwandelt, auf dem die Opfer der militärischen Abriegelung Europas direkt vor den Augen der politischen Entscheidungsträger bestattet werden. Wir müssen die Toten sehen. Ihre letzte Ruhestätte soll unsere politische Unruhe werden. Unterstützt unser Crowdfunding, damit die Toten kommen können. www.dietotenkommen.de.
The dead are coming, and they then came. We started out with one funeral. We called it a state funeral. We invited the people who are responsible, the political responsible people for the politics we have on entering our country and entering Europe, and their spouses. And we held this Muslim funeral. The first funeral that we held was from a family who had their mother died on the way to Europe. She drowned, and the family had traveled on to Germany, and it was their wish to have a place to mourn in Germany, because they knew it was a Syrian family, and they knew this would be their new home for at least the next few years. So we had this funeral in Berlin, and the whole big idea was to create this big memorial, this graveyard in front of the Chancelleramt in Berlin, for all the refugees, so that we see the people that die at our borders, and it's not something far away that doesn't concern us, but it's something that happens here in our front yards. So and also, of course, for the people who are responsible, so they walk over the dead every day going to work. So in Germany, you always have to apply officially if you want to do create a memorial somewhere. So that's what we did. We wrote the special exit permit to the district office of Mitte, saying that we want to build here. And because we didn't get an answer quickly enough, we then put up this building site, which is also very important. This is where the European Union is building, we said, in cooperation with Frontex, you can see, and the German Chancellor of the Inner, Mr. de Maizière, a very conservative right-wing guy. So the sign was up already. We were just waiting to start the digging, and we put out this sign of how can you dig your own grave, because of course we didn't have enough money. We needed people to help us dig the graves in front of the Chancellery. We put this up, and in the night before we went on this march of the determined, people sent us pictures of all through Europe where they had already started digging graves. Yeah, but we talked to 16 authorities altogether, and our lawyers couldn't tell us anything. And then just 24 hours before the March of the Determined, we got this writing where the people said, okay, you're allowed to walk, but you are not allowed to take a caterpillar. You are not allowed to take any corpse, dead bodies, not allowed. And every vehicle that is going on this March of the Determined has to before go to a court, what's it called? Like a medical court to prove if there's dead bodies in there or something. So this was the rented caterpillar. We had rented a caterpillar to go with us, and it wasn't allowed. So the day before we started, we wrote to all our people that we hoped that would come. We said, guys, please come, but whatever you do, don't bring shovels, don't bring dead bodies, and please don't bring any caterpillars. So thank goodness they stuck to that. And the police was there too, of course, doing their job, happily confiscating shovels. And we managed actually to get 10,000 people on the street on that Sunday to march together with us, which was absolutely amazing. And so we got to the end, standing in front of this building site sign, and because the people that work with us, of course, they don't like any fences because of pictures like this. So there was a fence between the Chancellораmt and the Reichstagswiese, and they're all very close together in Berlin. So this fence, the people started pushing it over. And walking on the space we hadn't actually thought about as the memorial, but still. So the people then happily started digging graves. And of course, police was there too, and starting fights with police. We were very peaceful at the beginning, but the grass was just newly renovated, and of course the officials didn't like it so much that there were graves on the yard. So also here you see the nice saying, Reichstagswiese kaputt demonstriert, like the grass in front of the Reichstag has been destroyed by demonstrating. And here again, for this is what we actually had planned, yeah, and this is how the memorial looked afterwards. That's how it can go when you do, spontaneous theater. It doesn't always work out as you plan in the beginning. And the last work I would like to present is the latest one we did.
Stellen Sie sich vor, in Ihrem Land hetzt wieder ein Rechtsradikaler.
Die AfD ist die letzte Evolutionäre, sie ist die letzte friedliche Chance für unser Vaterland.
Stellen Sie sich vor, in den Bürgerkellern wird wieder rumgebrüllt wie 1923. Stellen Sie sich vor, Menschenhass wird wieder parteimäßig organisiert. Hier wohnt er, der Shootingstar des Rechtsextremismus, im Braunen Haus. Und hier haben wir uns eingemietet. Das Zentrum für politische Schönheit wohnt seit 10 Monaten Zaun an Zaun zum Posterboy der Rechten. Der Thüringer Verfassungsschutz deckte und protegierte über Jahre den Terror der NSU. Deshalb haben wir den zivilgesellschaftlichen Verfassungsschutz Thüringen gegründet. Weil das Bundesamt für Verfassungsschutz Björn Höcke nicht beobachtet, läuft hier seit der Dresdner Rede eine der aufwendigsten Langzeitbeobachtungen des Rechtsradikalismus in Deutschland.
Wir Deutschen, also unser Volk, sind das einzige Volk der Welt, das sich ein Denkmal der Schande in das Herz seiner Hauptstadt pflanzt.
Er meint mit der Aufarbeitung des Holocaust.
Wird die Geschichte, die deutsche Geschichte, mies und lächerlich gemacht. So kann es und so darf es.
Weil Höcke ein heimlicher Verehrer des Denkmals ist, bauen wir es ihm jetzt direkt vors Haus. Dafür brauchen wir deine Hilfe. Mit deiner Unterstützung bringen wir das Holocaust-Mahnmal nach Thüringen. Spende jetzt deine Stele für Björn Höcke. Aber das ist noch nicht alles. Wir schlagen ihm einen einmaligen Deal vor. Wenn er vor dem Denkmal auf die Knie fällt, wie einst Willy Brandt, und aufrichtig um Vergebung bittet, dann wollen wir der Ernsthaftigkeit seiner Läuterung glauben und lösen den zivilgesellschaftlichen Verfassungsschutz wieder vorerst auf. Wenn er nicht zu Boden sinkt, suchen wir Sie. Werden Sie Teil unseres Teams. Beobachten Sie den bekanntesten Brandstifter Deutschlands. Schlafen Sie direkt im Haus neben ihm. Spielen Sie mit seinen Schafen. Sind Sie Student und haben Zeit für eine Rund-um-die-Uhr-Überwachung? Sind Sie erprobter Hacker oder Toningenieur oder Detektiv? Wir brauchen Sie. Bewachen Sie das Mahnmal und sammeln Sie nützliche Informationen über unsere Nachbarn. Jetzt brauchen wir Ihre Hilfe. Investieren Sie in Beton. Machen Sie das Holocaust-Mahnmal direkt vor Höckes Haus möglich. Sichern Sie den Betrieb des Denkmals mindestens für die nächsten 2 Jahre. Gehen Sie auf unsere Seite und spenden Sie jetzt. Setzen Sie Björn Höcke ein Denkmal.
Yeah. Is he famous in Holland? No? Well, you have your own, I know, yeah. Anyway, well, he said this terrible thing about the Holocaust. He said a lot of terrible things, but of course this was also big in international media. In the beginning of 2017, he had the speech calling the Holocaust Memorial like the biggest shame. How can you put this shameful piece directly in the heart of Berlin? So even the New York Times talked about this and other media, and this was quite big just after his speech. And as things are, normally it got quiet again. But even when we started the research about him, even his colleagues from his party called AfD, which are all very nationalist, right-wing Nazis, all of them. Even they said, talked about this being like the Third Reich again, this speech, and trying to evict an exclosure of the party from Mr. Höcke, because even for the right-wing guys, this went too far. But nothing happened, and it got very quiet around him. So when we started research in this cute little place called Bornhagen in Thüringen, it's about 350 people living there, and we had the luck that the house next to him was completely free. So we then, early 2017, rented that place. And then we had a Nazi as our neighbor. So we started researching, what do you do with a neo-Nazi as your neighbor? And we stumbled over this page. This is an NGO page against racism. And it says, what to do if your neighbor is a neo-Nazi. So we thought, oh, great. This is good information. What should we do? So it said there, watch closely, you have to sensitize the other neighbors, you have to then act together against him, and you have to try and get him out of the rental contract, which of course isn't possible because this guy, he owns the house. So, but then as you see here, we started to work as detectives for 9 months. And parallel to that, of course, the idea of getting this memorial directly in front of his eyes, so he can see it every day. This was kind of from the beginning there. So then we started researching on how can we get these slates, how can we get them to Bornhagen without him noticing from Berlin. And as you know, well, we're an art collective, and we are only financed by sometimes a little bit by theaters, but mainly by private people. So of course, there's no big theater in the background to help us to create these 24 concrete slabs. So we then tried to find out ways of how light you can make them, how can you transport them. That took us about 3 to 4 months of work in Berlin. And finally, we found out a way how we could transport them then and build them up there. And this is what it looked like in the morning just before we then finally
Am Mittwoch im Morgengrauen wurde die Kopie des Berliner Holocaust-Mahnmals enthüllt.
You don't have to turn it up because it's just in German anyway. But you saw Mr. Höcke looking out there. And this is my colleague Marius telling...
Bornhagen,
him, and this is the beautiful Bornhagen. The commentator is saying Bornhagen is situated at the German Wurst Street, really. And this is what Bornhagen looked like in the morning, like you saw the helicopters going over there. Just stop this quickly. The helicopters going over. The police didn't know anything about it. Höcke must have called straight away. And yeah, we wanted to go out with it on a Monday morning. And as you saw, it looked almost like a refugee camp because we had to work under these tents and building up this memorial, and nobody should notice. So Mr. Höcke was looking on a refugee camp for days and days because the wind was so strong that we couldn't build one big tent. Oh, it was absolutely crazy. And then we wanted to go out on Monday. We had everything ready. And then the coalition Verhandlungen, the coalition talks in Berlin, they didn't get together on the night from Sunday to Monday. So we then had to stop our action. We said, if we go out on a Monday and the press is completely full of this problem of the politics not getting together, then we can just forget about the whole work we did. So then we waited for another 2 days and just hoped that nobody would notice in Bornhagen. Yeah, and this, as you see here, it was also all over international media, Washington Post, in Israel, really all over, because of course we thought the most interesting thing about Germany is always, if you want to have a film that goes to the Oscars, then definitely do something about Nazis, because that will take you to the Oscars. And also for international media, the most interesting thing with Germans is always the Nazi past, always. So I think this was part of the thing that got us in the big international media. And of course, attention, maybe we could talk about that later on, is a big deal of our work as well. It is very, very important for us to get the attention to the work we do, of course. And this is interesting also because a lot of people, yeah, it's a difficult. Yeah, anyway, we'll talk about that later on. Here just like a nice little video by Reuters for you. Come on. No.
Das einzige Volk der Welt, das sich ein Denkmal der Schande in das Herz seiner Hauptstadt gepflanzt.
Wir wollen erreichen, dass er versteht, dass diese Schuld, die er immer spürt, völlig in Ordnung ist. Und dass es aber wichtig ist, Verantwortung zu übernehmen und diese Schuld dann auch von ihm weichen kann. Wir fordern von ihm, dass er als Geschichtslehrer natürlich aus seiner, aus der deutschen Geschichte lernt und sie anerkennt. Denn wir haben analysiert, dass er von 1932 bis 1945 eigentlich alles ausblendet, was passiert ist. Das davor beleuchtet er und das danach irgendwie auch. Aber das ist für ihn einfach nicht vorhanden. Und genau damit, das muss er wahrnehmen und verstehen. Und wenn er das tut, dann haben wir unser Ziel erreicht.
So, of course, besides of calling us a terrorist organization, which is very funny, this is a typical, I don't know what they're like in Holland, but in Germany, the populists and the nationalists, they love being the victims. Like the whole time people helping refugees or doing good, they get death threats. I get death threats all the time. Their houses are being lit up by fire and so on and so forth. But if you do something against them, they're the poor victims. So of course they were the victims. They filed a lot of lawsuits against us, which thank goodness we have already won every single one of them. Also, which we got over almost 100,000 euros together within this 1 week, which was amazing. And the monument is going to be there for the next 7 years now. So this is what it looks like. And I'm looking forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, there are a few things. One of the things that you said that you would like to talk about is the idea of failing to accomplish something.
Well, I don't want to talk about it. I just thought maybe that's an interesting point because, of course, I thought because, of course, the works that we do are also seen as political activism, of course, and I guess as activists, it's very clear, well, the action has only worked out if you got the signatures or if you tear down a wall or so, yeah. And for me, for example, this is maybe the strength that art has. It has so many more layers. Of course, one of the goals was to tear down the wall, but the layer of activating people, the layer of how we perceive history or memorials, or how we learn from our past, and how we want to deal with what is a victim of a border, yeah? Is this only a German, and so on and so forth. So there's so many other questions being opened, and which are a great goal, for example, after this work, is that somebody founded the Sea Watch. A private man said, okay, I can do more as a person, and he took his private money and founded this boat that is still in the Mediterranean now with a third boat. So, of course, this is a much greater Erfolg, success, yeah.
So, I noticed that at several points in your presentation you used the word theater, and also spontaneous theater, as a way to describe the way your actions unfold, let's say, or how they are staged. And I was wondering, so, what is for you the beginning point of such a theater piece, and also what is its end? So at what point do you feel that the theater itself is ended and reality, you're back to reality, or how do you negotiate that distinction? Because I thought it was a very interesting way of thinking about your actions. So maybe you can.
Well, for us, with the work, with 4 to 6 months work, of course, it starts putting it out in the public, and that starts with the press release. And then with the press release, of course, comes the play on the social media that we do. We big on Facebook or on Twitter. Well, not only to get attention. I think it's an important. A lot of discussions is being made on these medias. Like a lot of things are provoked. The talks that start between certain parties about the work, and of course we are extremely provocative with what we do. So. The using the provocation of getting parties, different thought parties started to talk to each other. We use that, of course, and then we mainly set a time that we start playing for 1 week, and then it ends with a week. But of course, it lives. The memorial is still there, so you could say the discussion is still going on, and maybe the play is still going on in a way. But if we like to say, for example, the police coming to us leaving the theater. We like to call them they're like not paid actors that step onto our stage.
Like extras.
Extras, yeah.
Well, I'm just going to continue. So let's talk about this aspect of attention. So you say, okay, we use your social media to generate also like this buzz around the performance before you actually do it. You have these fundraising campaigns that obviously need attention in order to get to the point that you can actually make your work, and then you need to rally basically the international media around the end product. So I think it's very interesting to understand how you manage to do that, because that is obviously a big question mark for many artists that work in, let's say, the field of politics.
Well, what I was saying about the attention is that, of course, the attention is good because people then give money and we can finance what we're doing. But, of course, the most important thing why we put attention is the disgrace of these topics we are talking about. Like, how can we live on the richest continent, for example, and just don't care about a 2-year-old boy dying at our borders? Yeah, how can this happen? And this is something that definitely is for us. It's so important to create attention for these issues of our time, and to start to discuss them, and not have on the front pages, don't have the people discussing about taxes or the issues that are not about life and death. So what, of course, we try to do is to provoke attention to issues that are mainly not discussed anymore about.
How big is the group, the inner circle you're working with?
The inner circle is like 7 people, and then, but if we do the actions, there are almost 70 people, kind of, yeah.
Because that's a lot of organizing you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Yeah.